Hello, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Network. I'm Rick Anthony. A few years ago, a family made the national news when they decided that for 1 week that they would not buy anything not made in America, as an expression of their patriotism and to call attention to just how pervasive made in China had become in the U.S. economy. They decided that they would focus on American-made products. They didn't really expect to stop the flow of cheap goods into the U.S. economy, but they had hoped to start a dialogue on the importance of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. In a newspaper article at the time, the matriarch, the mom of the family, said, "The week was a big eye-opener for me. I enjoyed the thrill and excitement when I found true gems that people in our country had created. I loved knowing that by buying that product, I was helping to keep an American job. But I wasn't prepared to have to dig so deep to find necessities. There are people all over our great country who only buy American-made. I sure wish I knew how they do it." I was reminded of that family when I met Jim Stuber, founder and CEO of All Things American-Made. Jim's goal is to provide consumers who want to buy American-made products a multi-channel marketplace for all things American-made. Welcome, Jim, to the Entrepreneurs Network.
Thank you, Rick. Glad to be here.
Delighted to have you. You are on a mission. But you got an interesting background because before you started this venture, your experience had included public service, had included other entrepreneurial adventures, not quite the same. So what's your story?
Well, it started out really in public policy. I had this idea I wanted to do public policy. I was a poli-sci major here at Penn and started out working on Capitol Hill. My first job was as a legislative assistant to a senior member of Congress. And then I had this crazy idea I wanted to run for Congress myself. So I went back to Florida, where we were both from, and ran. And thank goodness I lost, because that's a tough life. But I also, close second to public service was always entrepreneurship. And in my law practice, I went into business with a couple of my clients, and I enjoyed that. It was mostly early stage technology companies. And then I just phased out the law practice and continued to be the business and law partner of inventors in early stage technology companies.
Was that all in Florida?
No, actually, most of it was up here. I started in Florida, and then my wife and I decided after 3 hurricanes to clear out of town, and Philly was my top choice. We came back here, and I've done most of that here. I've been a member of what's now the Philadelphia Association for Capital and Technology for 10 years, and I've been involved in our entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Philadelphia.
What exactly inspired you to take this on, to devote all of your time, considerable talent, and some of your treasure to trying to create a movement to buy American?
Well, they say entrepreneurs have a light bulb moment, and mine actually involved a light bulb.
Really?
I took out a light bulb, and on it were 2 things. There was the GE logo, which means America, and then one other thing. It was one word in all caps, and it was China. And for some reason, the juxtaposition of those 2 things on that light bulb really just was a crystallizing moment for me. And I had recently been to the Scout store to buy some things for my son, and I noticed that it was all made in China, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. So kind of a confluence of things happened there, and this idea just got a hold of me. And I said, you know, why does it seem that everything is made somewhere else, especially China? And as I looked into it, I realized it's because it is. We've really, the tide has gone out, and we've sent 6 million jobs with that tide. And so that was the second question: is that causing a problem? And I realized as I looked into it that yeah, we had lost 6 million jobs in these 2 recessions that didn't come back. We're still down 8 million jobs, so we haven't replaced those manufacturing jobs. So it was creating a big problem. But the important thing I realized was, the third question was, can we do anything about it? And I realized that consumers, since we are 70% of the economy, could do something about this if we just change some spending decisions and start spending money we're already spending on things that were made here.
So you had the audacity to think that you could single-handedly reverse something that had been going on for probably 40 years in the post-war period?
This is one of those things, you know, you read stories about one person who started something, and so I just decided I wasn't going to let that daunt me, because I just kept having, this is one of those things where if not now, when, and if not me, who? And I just said, look, I don't know where this is leading, but I'm willing to
How
take
were
it
you
on.
able to, you have a wife, children, so on. How were you able to persuade your good wife that this was something that was doable? Of all the things you could have done, all the other enterprises you've been involved in, that this was one that was doable.
Well, God bless her. When I first met her, I was running for Congress, so she already knew I do crazy things.
She knew what she was getting into.
and she was with me through my other entrepreneurial ventures. But she actually likes this one, and we were actually. It's kind of ironic because this was 2 years on Valentine's Day. I had her out for dinner, and I told her about this.
Yes.
And she said, you know, I have to say, I think that really sounds perfect for you. So she's really on board, and you know, a lot of our family assets have gone into this. So thank goodness for her.
It's been self-funded up to now.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
You're a B Corp. You're not an S, not an L, not a
LLC or any of those things.
What's a B Corp? I've not seen a B Corp before.
B is a nickname for a for-benefit corporation. It's actually something that was invented here in Philadelphia, I think about 7 years ago. A number of states have adopted these statutes. Any corporation is a creature of statute, and there's a state law that says we authorize these things called corporations to be made. And so far, there have been you either were a for-profit or a not-for-profit corporation. So this is a third kind of corporation that, in its charter, is authorized to take the public good as its mission, in addition to making a profit.
Okay, so it is yours is a social entrepreneurial venture.
It is.
With a double or triple bottom line.
Well, it's at least triple.
At least triple.
And it depends on how you're counting, because we're not only creating jobs in factories, we're going to create jobs building factories, and so yeah, it's a triple bottom line venture. And the mission is to build healthy communities by helping people buy things that were made in those communities. So that's the for-benefit piece of the business. But fortunately, it's also a good business.
You're not the first, as you know, and I assume that before you started, you did the research to check out how many other websites are dedicated to promoting Made in America.
I did.
And as you know, there are several. There have been others. How is yours different? And why do you think you will succeed where others have not? Because I'm not aware of any other that has really made a dent, made a significant progress in trying to reverse this tide.
Well, if you look at those sites now, basically what you discover is that they have a very limited product selection, and they're difficult to use. In fact, a New York Times writer referred to them as an ugly hodgepodge of rain boots and pliers. You just go from one crazy thing to the next. And so if you visit those sites, and God bless them for trying, you know, you can find some things, but it just isn't going to do the job. And I think the main reason is that no one yet has raised the money to do this right, and no one yet has understood what it would take to put up a site that really worked.
But since you started, since you launched, hasn't Walmart committed itself, at least made a public pronouncement that they will promote American made? They will promote bringing manufacturing back to the U.S.? Can't you buy American made on a special section of Amazon or some of the other electronic retail stores? So, once again, aren't they beginning to catch on as well?
Well, when you try,
but there's an appetite for American made.
When you try, it's surprising how difficult it is. Just this week, my wife decided that these towels had to go, and we were going to get new towels. And so she's been on those sites. And what happens is you'll type in that search term, and what comes up is a lot of other stuff. So you never just get an American-made product. There might be one, but that's not what I'm looking for. And what's all the rest of this? Well, none of the rest of that was made in America. So those sites really haven't teased out the American-made component, and because most of their products, you know, are foreign-made. So that's the opportunity. I have two kinds of competition: the American-made sites, which I've described, and then the big sites. And as I say, the unmet need there is being able to go on a site and know that everything you're looking at was made in America, and find what you're looking for.
Yeah. As I've shared with you before, some of the pushback I've gotten from people with whom I have discussed this, prospective investors and so on, is that, Rick, let's accept the fact that human nature is what it is, and that most consumers faced with price versus patriotism will go with price, low price, assuming that there is almost comparable quality. So once again, how will you appeal? And what are you appealing to with American consumers? Are you appealing to patriotism? Are you appealing to some other emotion, or is there a rational argument that can also be made to promote buying American over buying foreign-made?
Well, the rational argument in many cases is it's going to be a high-quality, durable good that's going to last for a long time, and so you're not going to have to worry about it, falling apart next year, and then you buy something else, some other cheap good. So there is
quality is up, and
but quality is up as well. So then the next shopper will be the person I call the social shopper. So price is not what's driving their buying decision. So they're already buying green. They're trying to buy local, especially with their produce and so on. And so for them, they're really not happy that all their clothes are made in sweatshops. And so this social component of this appeals to them. And then they as well, the light bulb is really going on for a lot of people that this hollowing out of the middle class that's resulting from sending these is not going to end well for anybody, even those who are doing well. And so they are aware that our economy is suffering here. And then finally, you just get the plain old patriotism, but that still is very active, and so you really get a range of motivations.
But aren't there some product categories that will never come back? Electronics, for example. Television sets or screens will never be made here in the U.S. again, I don't think. They'll always be coming from China, Vietnam, someplace else. Is that not the case? Or do you think there's a chance that we'll get back our electronics industry as well?
Well, I have this combination of stubbornness and optimism. And so I just say never, that I would not write off any industry that couldn't come back to the United States. I do think that there are some industries that it's going to take time to turn the ship around.
Right.
But you see signs that this is doable. Tim Cook has succeeded Steve Jobs at Apple, and he has said he wants to start making computers here again. And so you see signs of that. So the main thing I want to do with Altham and this movement is to create that demand, build that demand, so that manufacturers like that or brands who are thinking about bringing them would be confident that if I did that, people would really buy these things.
Are there certain categories? I mean, I've kind of mentally written off electronics, at least with the short term. But are there other categories where there is more hope? Apparel, for example, clothing, fashion. There seem to be more small designers, more small manufacturers coming back to the U.S.
There are, mostly on the women's side of clothing.
Right.
And I think in particular with women's clothing that's because of the design, the unique design feature that each brand can kind of have its look. But I think that we can also bring the men's clothing back.
Is it likely, though, that most of the activity of U.S. manufacturing will be premium on the higher end because the margins are greater, therefore there's the opportunity to cover higher costs here, manufacturing costs?
Well,
Rather than mass merchandise?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. American Apparel is a good example. They are making very reasonably priced clothing in a factory in Los Angeles. So I think that across the whole spectrum, we should be able to do this. Oftentimes, you're going to find products, I'm thinking of paper goods right now, where you can go into a store and you'll see one thing made in China and one thing made in the U.S., and you're not paying any difference in price at all.
Are all products marked, their source of origin?
They are, or they're supposed to be.
They're supposed to be.
Back when we were talking about the B Corp, I wanted to mention I've actually formed 2 nonprofits as well. And the one I'm thinking about right now is an advocacy nonprofit that would seek changes in the law so that a product must be clearly marked on its package and in its descriptions on the internet and in catalogs, so that pretty quickly on a consumer can tell where it's made and make an informed choice.
But some of that language can be deceiving because products can be assembled in the U.S., but the components made someplace else.
Right, and so
doesn't that still say made in the U.S.?
No, it doesn't.
It does not.
Right, that product is supposed to say assembled in the U.S. from foreign. Joseph Abboud suits are sewn in the U.S. with Italian cloth. And so the Federal Trade Commission has a pretty robust body of law about that. That's not to say that some brands aren't bending the law and deceiving people with their labeling.
The only place I can think of where I have seen that has been with automobiles, where there is something someplace that indicates where the parts were made.
Yeah, it's right on
And
the label.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been there. It's the North American Automobile Labeling Act or something pretty close to that, and that was since '65 when we got this agreement with Canada. So it only tells you the North American content, so some of that's from Canada, but it does tell you very specifically. But other manufacturers will put it right out there. General Electric, if you go on their website, are claiming 70% U.S. content because they want people to know.
But Jim, because we're operating in a global economy, and because it's all tied together, all the pieces are tied together, and obviously there's big money at stake, and national interest, and politics, et cetera, et cetera. How do you unbundle all of that so that if on the one hand you're encouraging U.S. manufacturing, it doesn't pull on some other aspect of trade, foreign relations, alliances, our defense position with certain countries, possibly destabilizing the economies of China or even Japan, if you and others are successful in reversing this trend. Am I making myself clear?
Sure.
I mean, we've had 40 years of building economies based on our offshoring everything and helping other economies at the expense of our own.
Right.
Now we want to try to reverse that. But how do we undo much of the infrastructure that's been built around this model that's been in place for so long?
Well, that's what I love about this. It's this simple thing called consumer demand. So if it's not build it and they will come, it's come and they will build it. So if this demand grows and people know that people want these products, then they're going to increase their manufacturing capacity or build new capacity. You know, they're going to meet that demand. So it's a very elegant, simple solution, which is just keep our eye on the ball. You know, don't look left or right, and let's just balance trade. You know, we're not talking about stopping trading. There are only 5 countries that account for 90% of our trade deficit. One of them, China, accounts for half of that deficit.
Yes.
And they have no interest in fair trade. You know, they are building their economies by selling us more than they buy from us. So we're really just talking about bringing that trade relationship into balance. And we certainly don't want to be building up another country's economy by hollowing out ours. Because in the long run, we can't continue to do that.
You sound like somebody who's writing a book.
Yes, actually. I
knew that.
The other nonprofit that I just was mentioning, I decided that we also need a nonprofit to create awareness of the things you and I are talking about today, about how the problem this offshoring is causing and how consumers could solve it. So I did create that nonprofit, and it has its own website. And then I realized as I was populating that site that back when that light bulb first went on, I knew there was a book here somewhere that I was going to have to do the book. So I've been holed up in the Penn Library. I actually took a sabbatical from this starting last June for a few months, and my family didn't see much of me, and I felt like I was...
How far along are you?
About 2/3 of the way.
Really?
And a lot of the content is already on the MIAA Aware website, so folks can see the results of my research.
Will it be self-published, or are you looking for a publisher?
I'm not sure which way I'm going to go now. I think a lot will depend on the timing, because I'd like to launch the website and have the book come out this fall. And that may be too short for the big publishers.
Will it be written for the common person?
Indeed.
To understand all of the intricacies of what we've talked about?
Yes. My goal is that anyone, any American can read this book and understand it. And yet, at the same time, I've got the depth of research so that people won't be shooting holes in it and saying, Jim, that was naive. You know, I really have done some pretty in-depth research. But my job is to interpret that research and put it in plain language so that every American can read it. And hopefully this will be one of those books that people
Do you have any idea how many American-made products, consumer products, there are? Well, and how are they delivered now? How do they go to market now? How do people find them?
The only categories I've seen where we really seem to have a deficit are the ones we've discussed already, which would be electronics and apparel and textiles. Across the other range, it's surprising the things you find out there. And some of them are trying to do direct internet sales themselves. Some of them are in stores. It's just they're this one American product you discover, and sometimes you'll make a happy discovery. So they are in stores. So my goal is to connect consumers with those companies.
Give me some other examples. For example, food products, produce. Forget about seasonal produce, but it seems to me most so much of what we buy in supermarkets now, it's coming from other countries.
Well, that's seasonal. You know, the out-of-season produce is coming from other places.
Okay, so it's out of season.
So that's a different thing.
How much of our food supply is coming from outside of the country?
Not much. Yeah, my research shows that that isn't as big a problem as I would have suspected, and that when you look at our food employment, it's not down very much, and our food imports, you know, it's kind of a cause for concern that are we buying tilapia grown in China, and why would we do that?
Right.
But so far, it's not anything of the magnitude of some of these other categories.
Okay, footwear.
Footwear is gone, and I want to get it back. As I said, I'm not giving up on. You know, we have just a couple of premium brands that are still made here.
What about building materials?
A lot of, I'd say the major part of our building materials are made here. The things that are very local in nature, like concrete and asphalt, are still made here. But there has been, you know, a trend toward importing some of that stuff, and the famous example of that was we were importing Chinese drywall, and it turned out it was giving off toxic fumes, and you had people basically having to gut $5 million houses because they had Chinese drywall in them. So it's a point of concern, but building materials is still a strong point for American products.
I bought a suit recently. It was from a small haberdasher up in upstate Pennsylvania. Really a small shop, but he's got very, very nice stuff. And I was absolutely, well, there were two experiences. One, I bought a sports jacket, and he told me it was from a Canadian company. So I thought, okay, at least it's North America. So I bought it. Well, it was a Canadian company, okay, but it was made in China.
We have to be very careful.
Then I bought another suit from a company called, I think the last name was Cohen, also a Canadian company. But they are a Canadian company. They manufacture in Canada. They do not offshore. All high quality goods. And again, I was absolutely delighted that I was able to buy a product that was at least made in North America. And I wasn't forced to buy something coming out of Bangladesh, Vietnam, China, or someplace else. And I asked him whether or not that company was doing well. He said they're doing very, very well.
I'm
but
glad
he
to hear
told me
that.
about other companies that had not done well and had to fold because of the cost of manufacturing in this country. Which brings me to, how are you going to co-opt the unions to go along on this ride with you? Because they have a great deal to do with the cost of manufacturing.
Well, that's no longer the problem that you are thinking of. So, because you may be thinking of auto workers in Detroit who may have overreached and were being paid very well in the 60s, for example, or early 70s.
Yes.
But just a week or so ago, the Wall Street Journal ran a pretty in-depth article about the gist of it was the auto industry is back, they're booming, but the workers aren't seeing it. And they profiled a family in Pittsburgh. They're a member of the UAW. They make components that go to the manufacturer, and they're making $12 an hour. And you can't support a family on $12 an hour. So the unions now are certainly not overreaching, and they're not, you know, it's just not in play. What's happened is that either we have already sent those jobs overseas, or the threat of doing so is having this downward pressure on American wages. And you just can't live in Pittsburgh on what you can live on in Shenzhen. So it's not going to be a factor. What we really need to do is bring the jobs home and pay people a decent wage for performing them.
And again, I'm just having a hard time understanding. I want to believe you. I absolutely want to believe you. And I'd love to be able to go into a site and whatever I want, whether it's a tie, a shirt, socks, a pair of loafers, a tool. Are tools still made in this country? Are craftsmen still made in this country?
No, craftsmen are not. It's, a lot of people are very unhappy that Craftsman and LL Bean and Carhartt and all these iconic brands have sold out. But there are, and this is one of my favorite stories, because when I was in college, I would go home and work as a carpenter in the summer. You know, I had my hammer. I still have my hammer, made in USA. Well, my son wanted a hammer. So I went and I had a choice. I could either buy him a $15 hammer made in Hungary or China, or a $25 hammer that was made in Michigan by Estwing. And so for the cost of 2 lattes, I got him an American-made hammer, And so that, yes, we're still making tools here, and if people stop and think about it, you know, I can buy him that hammer. It's going to last him all his life.
You know, we've been concentrating on the internet, but your strategy is multi-channel. So it's the internet, it's catalog, and it's
TV sales,
QVC, a shopping channel.
Yes, right.
Dedicated to Made in America or American-made products.
Right. So taking that one first, this is unnatural because you know you can picture a segment on QVC or Home Shopping Network, and here's dinnerware, but the differentiator is not only is this lovely stuff, but this was all made in USA.
Yeah.
So that will be as I work with my supplier partners, you know, doing those kind of segments will be a big piece of this.
There is no such channel now.
Well, we will be going on the existing channels, but our products will be made in USA.
Okay, I thought you had in mind creating your own shopping channel.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea,
but
though.
You know, could happen.
Yeah, it could happen. But QVC, Home Shopping, and all of the others, none of them have special features or special section for American Made now?
No, they don't. They do bring on.
Is that right?
They will bring on a person whose products are made here, and they'll mention that it's made in the USA. Yeah,
right.
but they don't.
But they won't block out a period of time.
Right.
Dedicated to American-made products.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then the catalog will also be important because there's a lot of catalog shopping still being done in
You know,
America.
Jim, you know, we both spend a lot of time in the entrepreneurial, well, you spend all of your time in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but it's so sad. I'm thinking of 3 companies right now, all early stage companies, and they are trying desperately to stay in the U.S., to find somebody who will develop the prototype, do the design, and give them a price so they can go to market at a competitive price. And they're having a heck of a time. And
it depends on the sector.
Regrettably, they're finally coming to the point, I have to go offshore. It's the
Yeah.
only way I can get my price down from 10 to 5 or a significant number. And they're not necessarily going to China because, as you know, much of what it was in China is now in South Vietnam. It's low tech, but low price as well. And the working conditions are not as horrendous as they have been in certain parts of China. At any rate, these early stage companies with high promise are being forced to leave the country just so they can launch. It's terrible.
Yeah, it is. And I think part of the reason is that they're competing. They may have just a totally unique product, but that they're competing in at a price point that's been established by all of this cheap offshore labor. So it's, you know, there's a long-term goal here, and I think it's going to take a while to turn this big tanker around. But
you're a young man. How can people join you? How can people support you?
Well, I would just refer them to a website. It stands for Made in America again. It's MIAA.US. And from there, they'll be led to, they'll see a prototype of the Ultim site. They'll be led to the nonprofit site and all the information, and they'll be able to.
The site is up now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Ultim site is a prototype. You know, there's not products there. There will be soon.
I went on to various pages, and it says
coming soon.
To come. Yeah.
The awareness site is fairly well populated now with some pretty rich information about this problem that we've been discussing. And
you're raising seed money now.
That's right.
To get the seed money you need to launch and to populate the site.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we wish you well. I
Thank you,
truly
Rick.
do. Wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Made in America. And the website again is?
MIAA.US.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it for today. This is the Entrepreneurs Network. I am Rick Anthony. Take very, very good care of yourselves. And remember, buy American made.